All right. Sorry, we just had a couple of technical issues. So welcome everybody to the November 20th meeting of the Hadley Select Board. This is a hybrid meeting. And tonight for the Select Board, everything we'll be doing will be via roll call vote because we have remote participation. So with me is Jane Nevinsmith, myself, Molly Keegan, Chair, Amy Parsons, Randy Iser, and David Phil are all here via Zoom. Okay. In accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 22 of the Acts of 2022, signed by the Governor on February 15th of 2022, I announce that this meeting of the Select Board is being recorded by Hadley Media, Select Board's office via Zoom, and ask if there is anyone present who is also recording this meeting. Appears no one is recording the meeting. So Jennifer, if you could let the minutes reflect that no one else has indicated that they are recording the meeting. All right, so we have a couple of appointments this evening. The first one we had was with the Bylaw Committee. Don't see Jim Maximowski here. So we can come back to that. So let's move directly to 2.2, which is the departmental update for inspections. And I see we have Mr. Quinlan here tonight.
I feel bad.
They're hearing you.
How's everybody doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. All right, update. I wouldn't have thought it would be as busy of a year again, but last year for the full year, we did brought in permits $403,609 and 898 permits. As of now, it's close to 6 weeks left to go. We're at 401,958 and 808 permits, so we're about $1,651 short of last year. So I think we'll one good permit easily. If another house up that comes in will be above last year. That doesn't include the weights and measures, which is close to 25,000, and then we do about Mike and I do about 75 annual inspections, and that's not included in this, which we're working on now. The 304 liquor license and the 110 on the annual business inspections. And they're actually going pretty good this year. The Vern and Evan have been doing some of them alone, which gives a break for Mike and I. A big thing coming up that we're not looking forward to, it won't just be myself, but it'll be working with planning, Board of Health, electrical plumbing inspectors, the ADUs, which we have not received. I did
So just for the viewing audience, ADU stands for?
It is a accessory dwelling unit.
Yep.
Which the governor, I forget, was it February 2nd or 15th? It's supposed to take effect, but we don't have much guidance at all. I did a training with the state. I think it was 600 of us there was over 100 questions asked and we didn't get many answers. So our next month, building official meeting, we're supposed to try to get somebody from the state in there to give us a little more guidance.
Mm-hmm.
The tricky part will be combining everything as far as, Board of Health, plumbing, and all the codes and what requirements will be for that.
Mm-hmm.
So working on that, and otherwise everything's good. And we're going to start advertising for Dee Dee's positions because she's going to be leaving entirely for the assistant treasurer. So that should be posted soon, and hopefully we'll get some good applicants. That's about it.
So does anybody have any questions for Tom Quinlan?
Thank you.
David, Randy, Amy?
I don't have any questions, but Tommy, I'll be happy to sit down with you and go over stuff that I deal with on a pretty regular basis with other towns, not necessarily relative to ADU, but at least ways to try to understand what the town of Hadley would need to do to make sure that any applicant for an ADU qualifies under all the bylaw, the lot coverage and stuff like that we don't necessarily deal with. But those things are in the back of my mind relative to that issue.
That'd be great. We'll probably try to have another one with everybody again, fire chief. Plumbing, everybody was at the last one. Next time, definitely, if you can make it, that'd be great.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
And so question, this is more operational. So you have the relatively new still, I guess, the permitting software in place.
I was using that prior in Southampton for a few years, so it's pretty familiar with it.
Okay, okay. Is that working out well?
Yes.
Okay, and then from, so technology standpoint, do you feel that there are any investments that should be made at some point that would make things smoother or improve customer service or?
As far as the program, I think it's the most reasonable, most bang for the buck. It's local. It does continue to upgrade things with the most recent thing, like you don't have to do the tasking. We still check it. But if you put a permit in for a new house now, it'll do the tasking. We have separate categories in there. So for a house, basically everybody's sent out a notification email and it takes care of that now. It is going to eventually, I think it'll be one of the first one that is going to be connected with the state that will help check, so we don't have to check all the licensing and that. It's going to basically throw an applicant out if their license isn't valid or,
Okay,
they don't have one.
so it doesn't, there's a validation process in the back end of it.
Yes, and I don't believe any of them do that yet. They're working on that, which would be very helpful.
Okay, and then the second question I had is, at one point in time, we were talking, this kind of dovetails a little bit into some questions I have for the bylaw committee tonight, but over the years, we've talked about some of the enforcement type challenges that you might have. So, we may have a bylaw on the books that says whether it's zoning or otherwise, but there's really not an easy way to enforce it. I know at one point in time, we started having conversations about rental properties and whether we need to be thinking about doing anything different from what we're doing now. Short-term rentals, the whole Airbnb thing. So anything like that's on your mind that we should be thinking about?
It would be great. I mean, basically, any 3-family or more is an inspection every 5 years. I think it's 5 years on our chart for one-time inspections, but majority of the communities don't have the manpower to do it. So it's not done. It's done now, like when there's a sale. Michael will call in, the chief will call or Evan, deputy chief would call and say it's listed as a such and such, but we noted this. So they're required to let me know, and then that's when the inspection will get done. Those things, as Amherst they went above and beyond. They're doing all apartments, but it took what three more employees to do it. And it's something that, like working in East Hampton, they sent out the letters, and I think when I was there, we did 5, and how many apartments there is, or 3 families and more.
Yeah.
We don't have the manpower that, to do it.
So one of the thoughts we had when we were talking about making a requirement to have people record rental properties was that there would be a fee, and that fee would help to pay for the inspections that were going to be needed. In addition to giving fire and police information that they would like to have if they had an emergency call.
Yeah, and I think like Amherst did it is they put the money up front for the first year, and then after that, it should pay for itself. I mean, it's something in the future to work on, definitely. And we haven't, looked into it a little, the bylaw committee, which I'm on, we haven't priorities yet, but maybe I'll bring it up next month.
We're gonna have a conversation about that.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm not advocating one way or the other. I'm just remembering that you had come to us at one point with the fire chief, and then I never heard anything after that, so.
Yeah, and even, he's been pretty busy as well,
Yeah.
but it's the manpower.
Yeah.
So.
All right, anything else about the inspections?
Yeah, I know it's not on the agenda to talk about that, but I heard a lot of strong pushback in the community over the idea of a rental registration or.
David, can you give us just a moment? We're
Yep.
gonna turn the volume up.
Can't hear, I'm sorry.
Can you try again, please?
Testing.
Oh, that's better, yep.
I know it's not on the agenda, we'll talk about it in the future, but just throwing it out there, I've heard a lot of strong pushback from a large range of people about the idea of a rental registration, something like that. I know there's probably inspections that are supposed to be done, but it seems like one of those things that the vast majority of communities aren't doing. And so just throwing it out there, I think it's going to be a controversial hornet's nest that we're going to stir up by going down that road. And I don't know. We'll talk about it in the future, but when it's on the agenda. But the only other thing I wanted to bring up was, Tommy, we have to talk about agricultural fee schedule at some point. So just try to keep that on your radar down the line.
Sounds good. Okay, thank you.
Mike, anything for you?
Nope.
Okay,
So,
okay, thank you.
well, thank you for having me.
Keep up the work.
Thank you.
Keep those permits moving along.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so Jim Maximowski is here now. You want to?
Good evening.
Good evening.
You want update on the activity bylaw committee? First of all, I'd like to introduce the members of the bylaw committee because after the town meeting, I've heard some people thinking that the planning board was preparing the bylaws because I'm on both committees, and that's not true. The bylaw committee.
Jim,
is
sorry, do you mind
completely-
just pulling? Yeah, thank you.
The bylaw committee is completely separate from the planning board. The members of the bylaw committee are myself as a co-chair, Jessica Spankinable as a co-chair, Michael Spankinable as a clerk. They both represent their respective departments in town. Adam, I want to get his name wrong, Borvalt, he's a town member at large. Amy Fiden from the finance committee. Tom Quinlan from the building department. Mitch Cook from the police, Kayla Labriel from the conservation, Tim Nyhart is a member at large, and Randy is representing the select board. We have a couple of alternates. I'm sorry, there's a guest. I'm sorry, that was a different meeting. That's for the old minutes. And what we've done, obviously, from the last town meeting, last few town meetings, we've had some bylaws on the warrant they passed. What is coming up on not necessarily the next town meeting, but at least what we're looking at is everybody has been assigned a section of the existing general bylaws to go over them. Are they good? Do they need any updating? Stuff like that. There's a couple of sections that remember some of these bylaws have been existing since probably the 70s or 60s or before that. So the wording is a little bit, well, maybe not quite so correct. And one of them is the handicap access, and there's some words in there that probably aren't the most correct words to be using. So we're looking to correct that. And there's just those are more general updates and stuff like that. We are looking to do something about addressing large venues in town. Safety portion of the riverfront bylaw, looking to update that, but because that's got some litigation going on, we're kind of not touching that till the court cases are settled. We don't want to prejudice one way or the other. Something with the town common. The right to farm bylaw, and it addresses farm animals on 5 acres or more. And for the most part, even people that have farm animals on an acre lot aren't a big problem, but there are a few people in town that have some animals that may not be the most conducive to the neighborhood. Roosters, stuff like that, and they kind of make sometimes too much noise running around outside of their own yard onto other neighbors' yards. And if you got chickens in your yard, fine. But when they're running into somebody else's yard and digging up their property, how chickens do that, shuffling, for lack of a better word, they can make some messes of flower beds and gardens, stuff like that. So we're trying to look at what we can do reasonably and not be offensive to anybody about that. I guess word is getting out that we have this committee because I've actually had a business owner contact me that they recycle the papers and cardboard, but they're asking why we don't have a bylaw requiring all kinds of recycling. And we talked about this at a recent meeting, and for the transfer station, it's pretty straightforward. Many people are real adamant about recycling everything. My wife is always beating me up. Don't throw that away. Recycle it, even little tiny pieces of whatever it may be, pieces of paper, don't put it in recycle. Anyway, so the transfer station is pretty well orderly, and even though there's nothing there, but the businesses are recycling papers and cardboard, but most of the other things they're not. And because we have so many different people, companies hauling trash, one company does this, one company does that, one trash company does this, we kind of think that it's not, we don't want to force anybody to do things, although it may be might be a good idea depending. Where the concern is if we try to force companies, and that's both trash companies and companies in town to do certain things, we're going to turn them off to recycling, not encourage them. So we're looking to rewrite the recycle bylaw or the waste bylaw in a manner such that we encourage recycling wherever possible, stuff like that. But if we try to demand it or regulate it too heavily, it could very much backfire. So we're looking at what we can do with that one with a reasonable way. Let's see, what else have we got coming up?
Use of the common, I heard.
Right?
Use of the common you were talking about too.
The what? Oh, the common.
Yeah.
Yeah, the common and the large venues in a way kind of go together in that I know you've got some regulations on using the town common and stuff like that, but we're looking at it more from a police, fire, and cleanup after the fact. I don't know, I sincerely doubt you have your regulation get into the depth of cleanup after something goes out of the common and they have ruts, and that happens probably on a reasonable basis. Well, the DPW goes out there and cleans them up, fixes them, whatever it may be. Well, that's okay, but we shouldn't be expending town money to do that. So we looked at Belchertown has a pretty good town common bylaw. In fact, that's one of the few I could find in the state. And they actually require the people that rented the common to return it to normal. And if they can't, they will pay, they have almost like a deposit. If the town common is clean when you're done, here's your money back. If the town common is not clean when you're done, ruts or whatever it may be, we're going to deduct it off of your deposit. We're not sure that's the best way to do it. We're kind of, we're not sure. The town common bylaw is still in its infancy, and I'm open to suggestions from anything or ideas that people may have. And same thing with police and fire. They have tons of people there. Well, somebody gets hurt. And, should there be an emergency crew on at there, depending on the number of people, depending what the venue is? Don't have an answer for that. Don't have a good answer for that. We don't want to waste town resources just standing around, but we also don't want to make it a nightmare when they have to go there and help. That's not an easy one to look at. Same thing with, a large venue. They kind of both fall, in some ways, they're similar. We've had requests, first we were going to abandon the large venue in the town common idea, but some of the people from the various departments have says, no, we really need to do something because we need to have better control of what's going on and oversight. So that's where they'll stand.
So you said like everybody's taking a section on?
Yeah, under the general bylaws, everybody has different section of all the people that I mentioned before. They've all got something that's kind of in their area of what they do. And over the next probably several meetings, hopefully we're going to start to get some of those ironed out and addressed and corrected. And then we're looking at, what else could be done. And I'm looking, the select board have any recommendations, something that they would like us to look at, or for that matter, not look at.
Mm-hmm. Does anybody have any questions for Jim? Now, Randy, I know you're on the committee, so.
Yeah, so I don't have any questions. I pretty much understand what's going on.
Okay. David, Amy?
I thought that town meeting went pretty well, and there wasn't a whole lot of opposition to any of the changes, and I thought that was good. I thought they were well written and pretty clear. So I think that's the committee's doing well.
I'll second that.
Do you have is there an end to this, Jim? Or are you imagining?
Sure hope so.
Yeah.
When the committee was started, we had somebody from the town of Wilbraham. They had a similar thing from where Carolyn was
Yep.
from. And they said it took them about 4 years to get theirs addressed.
Mhm.
And people that were on the committee at the time, were, 4 years, oh, that's way too long, we'll be done. Well, let me tell you. With everything else, I mean, if you had a dedicated crew doing this, you know, a couple days a week even, or 1 day a week, yeah, you'd get through it a lot faster. But you've got people that are doing this kind of, oh, by the way, when I have a chance, I'll look at this, I'll look at this. And depending what's going on, like this last meeting that we just had, we had spent a lot of time getting the items on the warrant, correct? And other assignments that we had kind of fell by the wayside. You know, we're working on this a couple of days a month. You know, I'm probably, and you know, I'm sorry. Amy Fight is not on it from the
No, Paul.
White and Santa Committee. It's Paul Benjamin now. I just realized that. Paul and I are probably the ones that are closest. I mean, I'm retired. Paul is kind of, you know, he's still working, but he's semi-retired, I think. We're getting close to it, but everybody else has got full-time jobs. And so I can't, gonna be reasonable at what we're trying to get anybody to accomplish, but hopefully, I'm hoping with any luck, within the next year and a half, by Springtown meeting of 26, I'm hoping that will be the end of the project. If not before that, but I doubt it'll be done before the fall.
Yeah, I think the only question I have, just something that to think about is to the point that you just made, like a lot of, but these are municipal employees that are participating. And that's a lot of, a lot of their time being committed to it right now. I mean, have you thought about, as you get in, I mean, it seems like some of the topics you're talking about, some of the people around the table really don't have much input or much to say about it. Is there a way to maybe streamline it with a smaller group and then pull people in? Or, I mean, if you think this is the best way to do it.
I think the crew we've got is working well together.
Mhm.
And I'd be hesitant to tell anybody that we really don't think it, because granted, there's a very wide range of expertise on the committee. And at certain times in different meetings, somebody's getting 2 cents from somebody,
Mhm.
depending on what we're talking about. Even something as mundane as the the waste in the streets would be a good one.
Mhm.
Was brought up by Tim Nyhart. Okay. And then we started talking about it, you know, we actually touched base with the highway department a little bit. You know, what do you think? And you know, we're people on the committee may not have some area of expertise, but everybody's willing to go and ask somebody who does know more. So it works out pretty well like that. And I kind of like the committee the way it's structured right now. Maybe, you know, once the committee is so-called completed, if the select board thinks we might have it's worthwhile to have a committee kind of sitting in a background. If something should arise, then the committee
Like an ad
can
hoc.
greatly streamlined in that case.
Yeah.
But for what we're trying to accomplish right now, I would prefer to keep the committee as we are.
Molly, if I may.
Yeah.
Something that came up at our meeting the other day was when we were talking about the common. We are aware that there are select board regulations relative to the common, but nobody could find them anywhere. Do we know where they exist? Or where
Why,
they?
yes. Why, yes, Mr. Select Board Member, they're on your page under the words that say use of town commons.
Okay,
All of it there, including the $500 deposit that we charge. And everybody has board, all of the police
It's
and
right- it's right at the-
DPW, everybody has sign off on it and they can
Okay.
put their requirements on it.
Okay.
So it is there.
okay, that's, somebody said they couldn't find it, so I just wanted to make sure we knew where it was, that's all.
I'm assuming the select board has other regulations that they use, and those are all on the town website. Thank you. I haven't done really hard looking, so no offense that I meant no offense by saying I couldn't find it.
I sent you a very lovely email telling you all about it.
Could you indulge one request from me?
Right?
Could you indulge one request for your committee for consideration? Maybe not have the fire chief taking the minutes. He's got a lot on his plate.
Well, right now he does. I mean, before the dry season, it was a lot more.
The dry season.
But with now that the dry season coming up, that guy, he's burning the candles at both ends and the middle. Yes,
It would be lovely if maybe somebody else could pick it up.
yeah, I'm sure we can get somebody next meeting, yes.
Right.
Molly, this may not be for the bylaw committee, but I noticed that there, on our online bylaw section or program, we have a decent amount of stuff on there, but just like the town common rules, I mean, shouldn't we have a centralized location for all of this stuff to be on a website so people can find it versus having to go to the select board, to the planning board, to, every committee that controls that aspect of the bylaws?
Yeah, I think that's a bigger, broader comment. Yeah, that has to do with the whole access to information with communication. But yeah, I agree. I think sometimes it's just difficult to find things. I mean, there's definitely some logic there. It's just
to find it, yeah.
definitely something to talk about.
Yeah, and another thing that, and I've seen this other towns looking for information. Of course, I'm used to the town of Hadley zoning bylaws and bylaw page, so I can find things pretty easily. So I'm afraid to comment on whether it's a good idea or a bad idea the way it's led, because I use it so much. But I've gone to other towns and looking for bylaws particularly. And some towns are pretty good. Other towns are like, they don't call them bylaws, they call them some other name. And it would be fine if they call them an ordinance or a bylaw. Well, some towns have these, I don't know which, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but through my searching, I'm like, where are their bylaws? They have the zone bylaws. Zone bylaws are zone bylaw. Everybody calls them the same thing by the state code, if you would, or state law. But bylaws and otherwise, so the city calls them ordinance. Most cities call them an ordinance. Most towns call them a bylaw. But some towns call their bylaws regulations. Well, is a regulation under their view a bylaw? Or is it a regulation? Because they are different. They have different meanings and connotations or whatever you want to call them. And some of the wordings on some of these things, they get into, why would you get into that kind of detail? I mean, they're insane. I know, for example, a zoning bylaw, it's your intent. And it'll hold up usually in court under the intent as long as it's not too broad. Whereas a general bylaw needs to be more specific. But sometimes the specifics in some town bylaws are quite detailed, and to the point that they're almost overwhelming when somebody tries to utilize them. So, we're trying to be reasonable on what we do when we're not trying to turn anybody off with our bylaws. We want to make sure that they simply protect the town and the people in it.
Okay. All right. Sue Glowatsky has her hand up. So did you want to ask a question? Going once, twice. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Jim.
All right, moving on to the consent agenda, item 3.1. The only item we have this evening is approval of the minutes from October 16th Select Board meeting.
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Jane. Is there a second?
Second,
Second by Randy. Roll call vote, Jennifer.
Roll call vote, Phil. Isaac,
yes.
Keegan,
Yes.
Nevin Smith,
Yes.
and Parsons.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will move on to public comment. Is there anyone here this evening for public comment? Don't see anybody in the room. Anybody on Zoom?
I don't see anyone.
No?
No.
Okay. All right. Then next up, we have old business. Mr. McCarthy, DPW ditch maintenance.
Good evening. Few meetings ago, we talked about the ditch maintenance and coming up with a little better game plan of what to do. Nick Christofori from CEI drafted a proposal to the town, and we're here to discuss what our next steps may be. I don't know, Nick, if you wanna. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, so just to elaborate a little bit, we had come before the board, I think it was back like September 18th, something like that. Scott is always trying to look ahead at what can be done for maintenance. And one thing that came up was the town's agricultural ditches. And about 5 years or so, when the previous DPW director was here, him and I worked together to come up with sort of like the top 25% of the ditches within town that we thought should be maintained. And I think it was about 6 miles or so of ditches. So we did some work. We walked the ditches, came up with some recommendations, really with a focus on which of these are within agricultural land. And we permitted it through the Conservation Commission, and the town went out and maintained them. And since that time, it kind of fell off the radar a little bit. So there really hadn't been any maintenance since that time. So back September, we started looking at what could the town get done for maintenance before the end of the year. And in talking with Kayla, it was decided that really the best way forward would be to re-permit maintenance of those previously maintained ditches, because we kind of had everything already done, and get those at least maintained this year. So that's essentially what we did. We pulled together a permitting application process pretty quickly. We went before the Conservation Commission, I think in October, and we got the go-ahead through a request for determination of applicability. And Scott, I believe you are maintaining or about to go maintain those ditches, correct?
Yes, we're in the process of doing that now.
Perfect. Okay. So the other thing that kind of had come out of our meeting back in September with this board was, what would it take to come up with a program to maintain the rest of these agricultural ditches? So that's what I've tried to put together as part of an initial best guess estimate to walk these ditches and come up with a program. So as I mentioned before, I think the first time around was something like 6 miles of ditches. And in looking into some records that the town had from like 1990 or something like that, we estimate that there's something like 35 miles of ditches within the town. So you're talking something like 6 times as many miles of ditches as was originally permitted. So what the proposal seeks to do is, as first effort, is to do some desktop activities to really distill down what category are these ditches. And by that, I mean, which of these ditches are just in agricultural land? Because the important distinction with the agricultural ditches are they qualify for an exemption under the Wetlands Protection Act, and that you can basically go and maintain them with relatively few hurdles, I guess, permitting hurdles. So that's kind of like the low bar. We want to make sure we hit those. And I mean, we think there's, probably, I don't know, Scott, 75% of these ditches probably are something like within that category. So in addition to that category, it would be, what things don't we necessarily think we need to be maintaining or should be maintaining? And those would be things like what ditches are within like residential areas that, not to say they can't be maintained, but the bar for permitting maintenance of those would be much higher, because they wouldn't qualify for that agricultural exemption. So I guess with that, I just kind of would like to throw it out to the board and get some input on it. I mean, Scott, do you have anything else you want to add? I know Kayla sent out a clarification email later this afternoon, and I think her and I were mostly in agreement on everything. She just kind of clarified some of the inconsistencies in the draft proposal I had put together. But, you know, the focus on this initial effort would really be to determine what is required to maintain these agricultural specific ditches within the town.
So I would think that we should probably do task one. It's short money. It would, you know, we could work on that, and I think sharpen up the next step. We could get a lot better assessment of, you know, task two. Is that a relevant number, or is it going to be less? Because I think we could definitely knock some areas off that are going to be, you know, no interest to us. I think if, you know, we got together and, you know, worked on task two, I would like to ask Randy if he could be part of that, because he knows has a lot of institutional knowledge of this, and I think we could pretty easily, you know, dwindle this down.
All right, my arm's starting to burn from the twist, but I'll do it.
Scott, I mean, from my perspective, I think that's a great way forward. You know, task one, task three, task four, I don't expect those costs to change, but I mean, all of those compared to task two, obviously, are short money. I mean, task two is obviously where the dollars are, because it's essentially task two is directly proportional to the amount of ditches we need to walk and evaluate and survey and everything else. So I agree with you. I would love to be able to get that task down as low as we can and reduce those dollars.
So
Is this money already in the DPW budget, or is it something we're going to have to?
that's what I was just gonna ask for the funding on this. Is that-
Yes, I have a ditch maintenance line item that has money to cover that expense.
Okay.
The first expense.
Correct.
Okay. So I have a couple of questions. Number one, when I mean, the getting the permitting done, is it good for X amount of years, or is it good forever?
I believe it is good. It's either 2 years or 5 years.
It is not good forever.
Okay. Okay, and then the ditches that we determine are not agricultural, how do we gracefully tell the townspeople that we are not going to maintain those ditches?
I think that's probably, and Scott, feel free to chime in.
I think that's probably to be determined. So ditches that aren't located within a regulated resource area, and by that I mean things like a stream or a hydrologic connection, a wetland area, something like that. Those should not need to be permitted, at least through the Conservation Commission or Mass DEP. So in those instances, the town could theoretically go and maintain those ditches. What we need to be a little bit careful of, first of all, we need to know how many miles there are. You know, if it's 1 mile or if it's 10 miles, it's very different, obviously. And then I guess we would need to decide, you know, how much maintenance is it, how much of DPW's budget is that going to occupy. And the other thing you always have to be a little bit careful of is, from an ownership standpoint, who actually owns these ditches. And I mean, digging through some of these records on sort of a cursory level, a lot of these ditches aren't necessarily owned by the town or don't have an easement. So in that instance, you know, should the town be maintaining these non-town owned ditches? And I don't know what the answer to that is. That would really be up to the board. So I guess my long-winded thing is we don't really know, and I would like to see how many ditch miles there are to begin with.
Mm-hmm. I think we need to be careful if we've been maintaining them for X amount of years and then decide that we're not going to do it anymore. That's going to cause some issues.
Yep. The other thing is, I mean, I'm
not sure when some of these ditches have been maintained. So I don't know how used to people are. You know, I don't think the town's getting out there every 5 years or whatever it is. So I don't know.
Yeah, and just as an aside, we need to be extremely careful with when we do this, because we know what DEP will do to us if we do something wrong.
Yes.
That's always in the back of my mind, Randy, with the last problem that we just finished up on. So we do have to be very careful of this because it could come back and cost us a lot of money. So we have to definitely get our ducks in a row of what we're doing and not doing crystal clear.
Yes, agreed.
Okay, so are you looking for
If I,
authorization to move?
yeah, I'm not sure if I need it or not, but if you want to grant it, I greatly appreciate it and I can go start with task one.
Yep, I'm not sure that you need it either, but does anybody on the board have any concerns about moving into this next phase?
The item number 1 on his list. If he's got it in his budget and he wants to spend it, then so be it. I have no problem with it.
I think it's a good way to start.
Yep. Okay, Amy, David, you're okay?
As long
I'm
as-
good with that.
Okay,
Thank you.
have fun, have at it.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
You might as
Thanks,
well
Nick.
stay there. I think the next item is a request for water and sewer abatement.
Yep.
Okay. So we have in front of us a request for a water and sewer abatement at a property located at 105 East Street. You wanna,
Yes,
and Kim's here too. Okay.
yeah, can I refer to Kim? She has a lot more of the
Sure.
data on it.
We're not blocking them.
Um,
But she couldn't get in, I remember me.
Oh, okay. Kim, are you, Kim Piper, you online here?
I see her there. You're muted if you're talking.
Susan wasn't able to
Oh,
talk.
yeah,
either.
Susan was having trouble.
Oh,
I'm texting her right now.
Okay.
Susan was muted when she tried to talk.
I think she might have just stepped away for just a second.
Okay, but Susan said she couldn't unmute.
Okay, so
I-
it appears that, just the quick gist
yeah,
of this. is we-
so 105 East Street, after we read the water meters, Kim had the system noted a high read there. And, so she flagged it. We went out and reinvestigated and there was definitely a high read there. And Kim reached out to the, property owner that lives out of town. There was about a month lapse of time before the property owner got back to her. And we went back out again and did verify that there was a leak going to a secondary unit out in the backyard. And the water did go through the water meter. It was coming out of the ground.
So it was visible.
It was a visible leak, yes, but the property owner lives out of town, so. You
Is
know,
the property's occupied though.
property's occupied, but the tenants or whatever did not notify the owner that they saw visible water coming out of the ground. So I would recommend not giving the abatement that the water did go through the meter. It's going to a secondary unit out in the back. And
Mhm.
it,
Here's Kim.
Yeah, that would
My
be,
only Question for Kim was, I guess it was a month until they got back to you. Was the notification via email or mail or phone? Just, why I just want to make sure the delay wasn't on our part, that's all. You're
She
muted.
muted too.
Mhm. So,
I believe she mailed the letter.
Yes, I mailed the letter. So the meter was read on June 26th. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
yeah,
Okay, sorry, I'm in the movie theater. Sorry. So I mailed a letter on July 2nd, which was less than a week after the readings were performed. The usage was excessively higher than it's ever been. I sent the letter, the gentleman lives in Florida. So I sent the letter out. I never heard anything back from him in regards to the letter. So the bill went out August 1st. As soon as he received the letter, which was probably within that first week, he contacted our office right away. Didn't mention the letter or anything of that nature, but mentioned that you know, that I indicated there must be some type of issue. And he had, Wade from the water department went out and reported that there was visible water in the backyard, that was bubbling up through the ground. And it was visible. So, like I said, I did attempt to notify him to give him a timely way to be able to respond. But of course, the leak went on for those additional 6 weeks beyond the letter.
Can I speak?
Is that Sue?
This is Bill Podolik.
Property owner.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I can't see you on the, screen.
Yeah, I don't have that on. I don't want that on right now.
Oh, I see. Okay, this is right. Gotcha. I'm sure. Go ahead.
I never received any letter at all. And whether it got lost in the mail or not, because I would have been in touch immediately, obviously. So no letter came to me whatsoever. I didn't realize that the water was so high until I got the bill. The tenants may have seen something, but nobody said a word to me about anything. So as soon as I found out about it, I sent out Ray Shipman immediately. He contacted, I think, Bill Kelly, or Bill Kelly came out and checked it out. And so it went from there. And I did hear that it was visible, so I don't know why the tenants wouldn't say something. I guess they have no clue. They're younger. But I thought that since it was a water leak and it was underground, that maybe I would have a shot at an abatement on the sewer at least, because it had nothing to do with sewer. And it was, I mean, the bills are over $5,000 for the 2 periods. And usually it's under 125 each quarter. So that's kind of what I was looking for, I guess. I know the water, there's nothing you can do about that, but the sewer part of it, you know, nothing was being used. So that's all I can say. You know, I'm not around, I'm in Florida, so. My father owned those properties for, I don't know how many years, been probably 40 something years now, and they were left to me. So I've been taking care of them for about 18 years now, so. I am a Hadley native. I'm not somebody just, you know, whatever. So that's all I can, you know, if there's nothing that can be done, nothing can be done, but I just, you know, over $5,000 is a lot of money for a water leak.
So how much of that is sewer?
Kim or Sue, do you have that data, the sewer
It's,
side of it?
it's right there on board docs.
Looks like it says sewer use charge $1,835.52. Water use charge $1,501.02.
I guess the only thing I would say is that from a precedent standpoint, unfortunately, and I've been on the receiving end of Kim's phone calls in the past too. Sometimes these leaks are only detected, you know, because there's an anomaly in the usage. And I appreciate the collector's office pointing those things out. So in the past, typically, we haven't granted abatements unless there's really a kind of proven error on the part of the, you know, the meter being faulty. But entertain any comments from the board.
So in this case, where indeed the sewer was not used, but the water was simply seeping through the ground, I think we might consider sewer, reducing the sewer charge.
I was thinking, and obviously there were tenants there, so there was some actual water usage, not all due to the leak, and some sewer usage.
Oh, that's true.
But what about just to kind of cover us doing like $1,000 off of the sewer, since obviously most of that was leaking out of the ground. And then at least we know what was going in the sewer was definitely covered, even if the tenants were going crazy, taking, you know, day-long showers or something that month.
So is there logic to not charge the sewer?
Well, yes, there is, but on the other side of that, I look at it as recently we talked about and voted to alleviate like irrigation meters and things like that, which I kind of feel that, you know, the water went through the meter, obviously it leaked into the ground. It didn't go through the sewer, but it's still use of water, and no different if you wanted to water your lawn. It's still, you're paying sewer on it, et cetera. Those are our current regulations.
And I think that's consistent with the treatment we've had in the past, is that if it's
Correct.
gone through the meter, it's just,
Gone-
you know, again, I feel badly. I mean, it's not personal. Amy, Randy, anybody want to chime in?
Well, Mr. Podolik is a lifelong friend of mine, so I'm going to abstain from this conversation.
Well, there's really not all that much to be said. I mean, I don't feel that the sewer was being used, so, a refund would be nice. If that's not the way the rules are, then so be it. Not much you can say about it. I'm not there to visually see where there was any leaks at all, and I wasn't notified, and I did not receive any letter by any red flagging of anything. So, I mean, obviously, I would have gotten in touch right away. I don't like paying out $5,500 for water when usually it's under $250 in 6 months. But that's it anyhow. Nice to see you, Randy.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
I'd be willing to, if David made a motion to second it.
Oh, sorry, David, was that an actual motion?
No, it wasn't. It was just for discussion, but I mean, I'll throw it out there, and if people want to vote, that's fine.
Yeah, my concern is just about precedent. Again, I just hate to have us in a position where we're taking one action for one property and not being consistent across all
Yeah,
properties.
I think we did this with somebody else recently. That's somebody that had a toilet leaking for an extended period, and we abated some of their bill. So I don't think we would set a precedent here.
The toilet definitely goes through the sewer line, not into the lawn.
well, and I'm not saying we set the precedent as far as the water charges, because we know the water. Yes, that the vast majority of this went out onto his lawn versus into the sewer. So that's the only reason I'm considering it. But I don't want to set the precedent either and screw us up in the future. So.
But we also haven't seen something with this amount of money either. So I don't think it would be setting a precedent, but it's
Well,
really up to us.
Somebody want to make a motion one way or the other then?
I'll throw the motion out there. We'll see what happens as far as abating $1,000 of the sewer only off of this bill.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion made by David, seconded by Amy. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, okay, Jennifer, roll call vote then.
Roll call vote, Phil? David, I'm sorry, I did not hear you.
He's mouthing yes.
Oh, okay, all right, I'm sorry. Iser,
Abstain.
Keegan,
No.
Bennett Smith,
No.
Parsons.
Yes.
That's a 2-2, and I believe if it is a
The
2-2.
Speaker of the House.
Speaker of the House isn't here tonight.
I think that means that the motion fails.
Correct, yes.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
You guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, well, I know how this could go. I'll make a motion to accept the recommendation of the DPW director and of the DPW director to deny the abatement. Second. Okay, motion made by me, seconded by Jane. Roll call vote.
Roll call vote, Phil,
Yes.
Iser,
Abstain.
Keegan,
Yes.
Nevin Smith,
Yes.
and Parsons.
No.
Thank you.
So 3-1.
Yes.
3-1-1.
3-1-1.
Okay. All right. Sorry, Bill, nothing personal, promise.
Thank you, everyone.
Sure, sure. Okay, so next we have item 6.2, new business, which is the over 55 proposed property development with Hadley Village. So we have attorney Tom Reedy and property owner Cheryl Harmer.
Sure.
Sure.
Thanks, Molly. I've been doing that for quite a while. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it just doesn't matter how long I know these guys. And I'm sorry.
This is recorded, so you know.
I had to spend time with them at town meeting. And I'm sorry, and you're,
Chris Chamberlain, Berkshire Design Group.
okay, so Berkshire Design, Chris Chamberlain. Okay, all right. Well, thank you for coming in front of us. What can we
Thanks for
do?
having us. Sure.
I'll let Tom do the talk.
Great.
Yeah.
So this is a bit of preview of coming attractions more than anything else. I'm sure, you know, just fresh off of town meeting last week, we're gonna already start to talk about spring town meeting and senior housing. And so you may have heard Bill Dwyer suggest at town meeting that there may be something coming with revising the existing bylaw. And so what you see on the screen, you can get up there, Jennifer, when you have a second. Perfect, yes. And what you see on this board is the existing senior housing overlay district, save for the most recent extension off of North Maple, Rocky Hill Road. And so, you know, for a little bit of background, the senior housing overlay district bylaw came into effect in, I think, 2008. Under that bylaw, there has been one project, Barry Roberts's East Street Commons, 35 over 55 units off of East Street. We have met with the planning board on this, I want to say a few months ago, to talk about how to densify the existing overlay district and also about Barry's extension. And I think at that time, the planning board wanted to focus on, and I know we've got Jim and Bill here, but focus on the accessory dwelling unit bylaw and extending that over 55 overlay district. And so I trust that they will be taking this bylaw revision up shortly, I believe next month, to talk about how to actually get over 55 development into the existing overlay district. And so that, I think, you know, kind of by way of example, right now, 50 units are the maximum number of units that can exist on a site. There is a one dwelling unit per, I think, 7,250 or so, 260 square feet. And then within a building, you can't have any more than 4 dwelling units. And then there are also some restrictions on, you have to have at least, I think, 10% of single and 2 family, and you can't have any more than 50% of those buildings with 4 units in it. And so when we have, you know, the Parmar site that had the village shops, you would be talking about, I think, 15 separate buildings, which would be 20% greater square footage than if you could put it in a single building and take up 2 to 3 times the land area if you could just put it in a single building. And so the planning board does have the revisions in front of them. We expect to talk to them about it. And for that, hopefully the planning board to sponsor it for town meeting in the spring to bring in some additional density. But we then want to talk about what that could do for the Parmar's property on Russell Street. And so I don't know if you want to show just a high level site plan and rendering so you could see what could be possible on this site if the density were allowed to be increased. And so what Chris is showing is just a rendering of a 3-story building complete with the cupola. I think it's got 45 units in the building. No more. Yeah, that's right. No more than 2 bedrooms, which is what the senior housing provides at this time. And I think and Kishore, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're thinking about doing rentals. So these would be rental units, which is obviously a different product than what Barry has done at East Street, what Barry's probably going to do on the Bab property where those are home ownership. This provides kind of a one-stop, here's your monthly rental amount, we'll take care of snow plowing, maintenance, management, et cetera, which I think can be attractive, especially given that location. And so I don't know if you want to talk more about your.
Yeah, so I would just show, we also have the overall site plan that just gives an idea of how that fits for scale.
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
On a site that is common in that district. So this building here, which I don't know, Jennifer, you may want to scroll over it, is in similar scale to that rendering you just saw for a 45 unit apartment building. And just as compared to the hotel building that was there, say a hotel building that could land on that site today under zoning. So we just want to highlight that this isn't a radical departure on a site like this from what's there.
And so just that first rendering that we were looking at with the cupola, that is an L shape, right? That's that building up at the top.
And so this here is looking sort of from Russell's direction.
Yeah, so that's basically the rendering. Yeah, the rendering on the bottom is from Route 9. So that's what they'll be looking at. One of the things to note is just from a business standpoint, right now, as we all know, there's a retail location mostly historically. Retail has been a lot more difficult in general, but especially in this location, in this part of Route 9. That's one of the reasons that we started looking at this. We all know about the housing issues that are going statewide, nationally wide, and within particularly in Hadley too. This location is great. It's on Route 9. It's basically where good access points, not off in any other direction, north or south, which is beneficial. But the other thing is, from cursory conversations we've had with several people, a lot of Hadley residents, or quite a few who are above 55, are looking to downsize. And it's very difficult to find something to downsize to, and especially to another house. You're just trading some money for other money for a house, and you're still going to have the same problems you have that you already have in Hadley. So that's another benefit to this. Another thing is all the utilities are easily accessible right now that we have. And we also have the acreage for it. There's not a lot of area in Hadley that can accommodate this. So the density part of it is still a crucial part. There's other elements to the bylaws that if you're interested, we could talk about, Chris could talk about, that we've suggested that need to be amended or kind of discussed and find a good solution for. So
if you want to touch on those, it'd be helpful.
Chris, you want to touch on them?
Sure. I'm looking at Tom, who actually marked them up.
No, I mean,
or Tom.
Yeah. I mean, so the big one is that no more than 4 dwelling units in a single building, because that's the limiting factor right there. Because like I said, on a site like this, you'd have to put 15 buildings. And then what does a site look like? So it's just inefficient from a space standpoint, inefficient from a building standpoint, and frankly, you're probably not going to build something like that, right?
Yeah,
So
I think the key there that we're just trying to highlight with, on a site like this, where sort of the null option is to put a business use in, the need to create the separate smaller buildings just makes it completely infeasible to add housing, whereas with this opportunity in a narrow section of the district, I think that we're talking about on the sites that the intensity is appropriate for, that it makes a project like this cost-wise, viable to develop, and sort of in the business person's mindset, competitive with some of those other business uses that they could do now.
Jane?
So I heard you say that a use that would be permitted there is another hotel. Why wouldn't you build a long-term rental hotel and avoid the whole problem?
At least we already are doing that. So essentially the hotel we're building right now is probably gonna set the need for the demand right now. There's not a skyrocketing demand for hospitality in the area. Not to say that one day there won't be, but right now we find it stable, and what we're building right now is probably gonna suffice right now, in the short term. We're looking at this as a long-term solution to some of the problems we're also facing. Another part of it is that, the tax revenue that be generated from this is probably gonna be between 60 to 75,000 a year for Hadley too, if this was to go forward, or if any similar project like this would go forward.
Plus
And-
water and sewer.
Plus water and sewer. I mean, we have access to water and sewer already there. That's something that we would probably have to look at when we get to the point. Now, we know that this is not like an easy fix or something that, you know, is gonna get improved in like one meeting. There's a lot of other elements to that. We have to respect that. That's why the planning board is obviously involved. It's that there's a lot of levers and a lot of other things to check and to analyze for it. So.
Yeah, and I just want to point out that the comparison with the hotel is mostly because it's a business use that could be done now and at a similar scale to the building that we're talking about. So it seemed like a worthwhile comparison.
So my question was, what would keep you from building the hotel and using it as a long-term rental for over 55s?
That's not what, you know, we're in the hotel business. That's not what we want to do. It's not a good solution. And the other thing is.
And that may not meet the hotel use under zoning.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I think by law, after 30 days, you stop collecting occupancy tax. So you just turn into an apartment building anyways. It's a roundabout way of doing it. You know, we've seen it done in other areas, but it's not the proper way of doing it.
David, Phil, I think you had your hand up first.
Thank you. Have you spoken with Scott and about sewer capacity and the ability, because, you know, what was approved at town meeting, we could have another 90 residents going in there and then possibly, you know, another 90 or 100 over here. Just want to make sure that's the first of my questions.
Good evening again. David, no, and I was just thinking about that. Obviously, I'd be in full support of this because, you know, this water and sewer department, we're in the business to make money and sell things and receive. But I just like looking like further out, I don't think the sewer would have a problem. It's more the water. And I think something we have to really look at close with the new design of the water tanks to make sure we have enough. Maybe we should be looking at, you know, 1 2 million gallon tank and 1 million to just give us a little more storage. Because obviously in high demand, you know, we're limited on how much we can pump. So this is something we really have to look at closely, but I'd be really in favor of it. Obviously, you know, it's a revenue thing for us.
Okay, thanks, Scott.
And
Randy? your hand up?
Yes. We always, when we get into housing, we always talk about affordability. And I truly believe that the town needs to move in a direction allowing buildings of this nature, because that's where you get your economies of scale and things can actually be relatively reasonably priced. Granted, it's a rental situation, but they're not going to have to charge $5,000 a month rent as if they would if they were building 15 small buildings. I just think this makes a whole lot of sense. It looks like a motel. It's next door to a motel, and I realize we're just in the discussion stages here, but I just think it's a good idea.
David?
I got two more. So the first one is your target rent. I know you've run some numbers. I know it's probably too soon. You got to finalize numbers for construction and everything else, but what is kind of your target demographic, your target customer as far as these rental units?
So we don't have, you know, numbers down completely. You know, we're thinking rents around Hadley, I mean, not Hadley, or places of this caliber are probably gonna be around $2,000. With that, like our target audience is essentially folks that, local folks, hopefully Hadley folks who want to downsize, who don't want to end up wanting to mow their lawn, to worry about maintenance, to worry about plowing, and who want to free up. There's a lot of Hadley residents that are sitting on houses that they could get good money for, that they've already owned for years or decades, that they love being in Hadley, but they just don't want to deal with owning a house right now. That's who we're really looking for.
And so would it be, I wouldn't say upscale, but more upscale than the other senior rental option that's in town? Because that's what I've heard from a lot of seniors. They're looking for another option, something a little different.
It would be a little bit, it's newer, it's built by us, so it might be a little bit higher in rent compared to what's already existing. There's also affordable component we could put into it too, to keep our percentage high. That's up for discussion also. So, yeah, that's on the table.
Okay, thank you.
So you're coming in front of Housing and Economic Development tomorrow night.
Yep.
At our meeting there. So we'll hear, you may get different questions there. And then the big show.
That's right. Yeah.
The planning board, and that's the first Tuesday of December.
Yeah, and I don't know, Bill or Jim, if if that's when you're gonna take it up. I think the planning board was wise, just because I think they understood the attention that something like this deserves, and they didn't want to try to rush it for fall town meeting, and said, let's take a step back, let's really look at it, because this is going to impact the district, and everybody seems to think it's a good idea. So I think that's what we talked about, was the first Tuesday.
Yeah, we're hoping for the first week of December. I mean, we could touch base with the planning board, but yeah, the ADU situation, I think, threw a bigger loop than we expected. And then obviously that affects all of the town as opposed to just a small section of it. So we completely understand and respect that.
Okay. Yeah, and I would say from my standpoint, it's in concert again with the housing production plan. It's in concert with age dementia friendly, a lot of the senior feedback. I can tell you from my day job, clients that I work with, there are a number of people who home ownership loses its luster, and maybe it's transition time. People are renting for a year or two. Maybe they're planning on moving closer to kids at some other location, but they want to sell their house now. So I certainly don't think, even at the price points you're talking about, you'd have any issue with the vacancy rate here. So.
Agreed.
But but a bit complicated for the planning board to take up for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of elements that I think need to be discussed. So it's good, but we're excited about it.
Good. And love the cupola.
Okay, yeah, right. Good design.
They did that to match the senior center.
I'm not gonna say.
Any other questions for these folks? Okay, Kishore, when I see your brother, I'll make sure to call him Kishore. So.
I'm better looking. He'll say he's smarter though.
Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you.
Sure, we'll see you again.
All right. Item 6.3, I think probably the largest group we have out here in the audience. We have the Western Mass New England Mountain Bike Association here tonight with a request.
There's just a lot of them. They might need more. Right. Thanks, Tom.
So is this Kurt?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm Kurt.
You're welcome.
Say again.
Okay. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, go ahead.
All right.
You have a reason to be here tonight.
Yes, we do. So we basically wanted to follow up on the MOU the last time we were here. We left off that you guys were going to check with your lawyers and try to read through it and make sure that it was as you wanted it before we signed off on it. And so we're looking for follow-up on that. As well as a couple of other items. I don't know if you want to touch on all three off the top, or if you want to focus on the MOU first.
Okay. Mike, do you have a preference or? Or Jennifer, sorry.
Well, so I did go back and look. There was a transition, so things were a little slower, but I did go back and look and I attached the minutes into the board docs for y'all. Y'all approved an MOU for the NEMBA to do maintenance on trails, but not create new trails. So that MOU already exists with them. So this
And that was
is
from 2019, just for.
yes.
Yeah.
So y'all did have a precedent of allowing them to do the maintenance, but they had to come back for any new projects or changes or additions.
Yeah.
Which I believe is what you're looking for now.
Yeah, sort of. We wanted to open a conversation around parking. It's been kind of a thing, and you know, Chamorro Road has become an issue as the sport has become more popular, especially around COVID. There's been, you know, a lot of complaints, and with the increased traffic and the speeding along that road, we have heard that as an organization. We've experienced it from homeowners along the road, and basically we've tried to like think through how can we solve this problem, and that has led us to thinking about the other access points at the trail network, and has basically kind of led us towards that Hadley only resident lot. And you know, right now we have the 3 access points: Chamorro Road, Hampshire College, which is across from that Hadley only resident lot, and then the Notch or Military Road. And kind of what's happening at all 3 of those, they check a lot of boxes, but not a lot. It leaves a lot to be desired. So Chamorro is popular because it's big, it's a nice safe space. Like a lot of group rides are held out of there. You know, the kids rides go out of there because it's a nice space to collect the kids and get out on the trails. But it's at the end of this residential road, you know, and so there's obviously complaints with the traffic and the speeding. The other spot is Hampshire College, which some people know about it. We've been trying to direct traffic there to try to offload some of that pressure on Chamorro. But it has you crossing Bay Road in a pretty not great spot. You know, for myself, I'm crossing with 2 little kids and a dog, and there's people coming from Atkins down that little hill there. It's pretty nerve-wracking. And then the other thing that we've seen there is that Hadley resident only lot is having people park in the ditch. I mean, I was there dealing with some stuff on the trails, and I ran into a woman walking her dog, and she's like in her 60s and is like parking her car in the ditch because she doesn't want to get towed. And then the other one is, you know, Military Road and the Notch, which is oftentimes overflowing. It's a very popular hiker parking spot. And so we're trying to kind of think through like, what are our options for trying to fix some of these problems and make it safer for trail users, and not just us, like the trail runners. We've, you know, our Friends of Earl's group that are really active in helping to maintain the trails, and we kind of oversee and help support them. We now have like trail running groups that are reaching out to us and saying, hey, when's the next trail work day? We'd love to help out. We use the trails too. And so, yeah, I'm just trying to come up with a better solution. We're wondering if Hadley would be open to like opening that up to non-Hadley residents, you know, looking at the stats. Both, we did a survey in the spring. Within like a few days, we had over 100 respondents. And, you know, from that and looking at like our mapping thing that we use, you know, the bulk of people that are using the trails aren't Hadley residents. They're coming from, I think top of the list is Northampton, or no, Amherst, Northampton, South Hadley, and then Hadley. And so, you know, just trying to think through what's another option here. And the nice thing about that Bay Road, or somewhere along Bay Road, if that doesn't work, is it's centrally located. It's at the bottom of the trail system. So it's like, that's what most riders want, is to start with a climb, finish with a descent. So it seems to check a lot of boxes there.
And to clarify, yeah, the opening up that lot to non-Hadley residents would also come in tandem with improvements to the lot to make it, I guess, able to park more people, so there wouldn't be an issue with the lot overflowing. Some funding to be determined.
Looks like, David, you've got a question for?
Yes, so the chief administrator may smack me for saying this, but, I do think that we probably should consider opening the lot to non-Hadley residents. If it's, you know, sunrise to sunset, something like that, and still have towing after hours to maybe eliminate some of the problems we've had in the past there. But we have a ton of people that, you know, on North Lane that like to walk the dike, and they're looking for a place for outdoor recreation. We don't have a whole lot in town. I think that if there was some sort of agreement that the organization could maintain the parking area, so the town isn't bearing the cost, because like you mentioned, it's mostly out of town people. There are some in town people, but I think if we could do this in a way that makes sense, you know, everyone benefits, and it would open up to increased utilization, and in the end bring more people into town, to town businesses on Route 9 who, you know, they're going shopping or going out to lunch or whatever after riding the trail system. So I just think that it's something we should probably consider, and the whole Hadley only parking might be a little outdated.
Okay, Randy?
Yes, we call this the parking lot on Bay Road. And to me, it's a roadway. It's not really a parking lot. Without knowing, I'm looking at the assessor's map right now. So it appears that the road is on the boundary line between Town of Hadley property and Hampshire College property. And we had this conversation before where I suggested that somebody get a hold of Hampshire College and see if they are willing to allow utilization of some of their, it's a hay field or whatever it is. Because there's the only way to park on Hadley property is either in the road or in the woods. And I don't think parking in the woods is an option. And just so I'm clear with this, we don't have a problem with anybody accessing the town's property. We just have a problem with them parking. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So again, there's not enough space, in my opinion, on Hadley's property to park cars that are just not on the side of the road. So Hampshire College needs to come into play here. And I would recommend that the bicycle group goes and contacts them and see if they can do anything with that. Then we wouldn't have to be worried about it.
Well, it sounds like part of the Hampshire issue is the fact that it's the other side of the street, or is it adjacent to?
Well, that currently we're parking over by the tennis club there
Yes,
and then
they have
riding
land.
across.
Okay, but
Oh,
they
yeah,
have
they
land
have,
the
they have
field.
land adjacent to this parking.
To our driveway, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And those, yeah, I guess there would be a possibility to expand the parking or the parking area, which is just Reservoir Road. It would be possible to expand that with clearing some of the woodlands a little bit if we needed to.
Yeah, I mean, right now,
Obviously,
it's
preference
just,
would be just using the farmland because that's already open, but.
The farmland, there's actively farmed, and there's a reason why the parking is along the perimeter, and that's to prevent the farmers' access being blocked, which was a problem in the past, which I think is one of the reasons that led to the precipice of these permits that were issued, was that the farmer's land was being blocked when he needed to access it. And I think that's one of the reasons that the permits ended up being issued in the first place.
Yeah, like people parking on Bay Road, blocking it. Or
Coming in, you're at the trees, coming there and coming on the inside, you're supposed to park on the outside. And so you block his field, you can't turn the tractor around and stuff like that. I remember being yelled at.
yeah, no,
About
I was
that.
vaguely ringing a bell too.
Yeah.
And could I ask you, oh, sorry. I was just gonna ask, so I remember when we went with the Hadley only permitting, and there were other concerns about, you know, activity in that area. I haven't heard of any problems. Correct?
No, honestly, this, I've read their letter a couple of different times, and I certainly don't want to influence the board in any way, but I don't see anything on here. And I know, you know, David, I appreciate your concern. But I don't see anything on here that is a cause for concern as we stand. As long as we can develop a, a working relationship with them to make sure that we're, it's being handled properly. And then, and if worse comes to worse and it turns into a disaster, the board could always, reverse their decision or make a change for the future, but I just don't see it being a big problem.
Okay, Jane, you want to say something?
Well, I was wondering about issuing in-town and out-of-town permits where we would charge for out-of-town permits for parking, which is a source of income, which we're always looking for. And then you can note, I mean, you obviously are in communication with all your bikers and say you need to apply. We'd be able to do that by mail, I'm sure.
Yeah, that was part of our survey, was asking if people would pay.
Yeah.
That, you can imagine. I mean, just look at what the results
I think
were
it
on
was like
that.
75%.
Yeah.
Correctly said they would not want to pay.
Yeah.
They would probably just find another lot to park at.
71 to 29%, yeah.
So the other issue with that obviously is enforcement.
Right.
So that
Right.
would take up
Right. Too much
resources
time.
and time to even enforce that anyway, so.
Randy has.
And, part of, what, I don't know your name on the top right. What he brought up is
Yeah, it's David.
a really good point is, people are showing up to ride these trails, I don't know if you guys had a time to look at the regional survey that was done. I mean, just to put it in perspective, like we had a ride this past weekend, there were over 100 riders there up in Wendell State Forest. These are like $800 to $7,000 plus bikes. Like, I mean, Valley Bike and Ski Works here right on Route 9, they've been selling bikes for years and they're not cheap. And it's like, we're going to Mission Canteen afterwards, we're going to Trader Joe's, there's like, it's a thing, and it's like the other thing that's about to shift and come online is Charlemont has been pumping money into their mountain bike trails, and it is becoming a regional thing. And like, so it's like what we do as a family when we travel is you're going to ride Charlemont or, a comparable thing up in Quebec or Colorado or whatever. But also you're looking at, what else is around here we can sneak a ride in before we, take the kids for a ride and go to a movie or whatever. So it's like, it's a thing, and people are driving very expensive cars with very expensive bikes, so it's.
They don't want to pay to park. They've got all this money to buy their.
Yeah, and I get that. As we are trying to build our membership, that is a shared frustration. But, they're spending money, they're buying gas, they're eating food, like.
Right, the fields.
I paid to park somewhere that had amenities and like a parking lot and stuff, but I don't want to pay money to park at their field,
Right,
So
right,
there's-
it's gonna
and
get
I-
the undercarriage here.
They're definitely willing to pay to park. I would pay to park here,
Right.
but I don't want to pay to park on the side of the road.
And that.
Randy, you have?
Yeah, so I'm hearing all this talk about permits and parking or whatever. We got to figure out where people are going to park. There's definitely not enough space there now, even if we allowed non-Hadley residents, that road would be overwhelmed in 2 seconds. So to me, it's a question of, if this is going to go forward, do they petition Hampshire College to try to use some of that field? And to Jennifer's point, yeah, the farmer's going to be upset, but Hampshire College is going to say, Mr. Farmer, you're not getting this piece of our land anymore. We're going to allow it for parking over here so that whatever can use it to use the woods. And so it's either Hampshire College land or Hadley land, which means cutting trees. And I don't know if there's wetlands there or not. I can't remember, but that would become an issue. So big thing for me is figure out where you're going to park and then figure out how to permit it.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I have no objection
So
to,
would it be worthwhile that this Hadley Select Board support their request to Hampshire College to use that field for parking for access to the bike trail through our road?
yeah, I don't even know, if we need to do anything formal, or, I mean, it sounds like that's kind of a logical
Yeah,
next
and
conversation.
we had already started up conversation with a few people that were past board members that work at Hampshire College, and then summer happened and it fell off the radar, and then but yeah, we're gonna try to reach back out to them and facilitate, because for them, they run so many outdoor programs. Like the possibility for us is like, oh, if they gave us, the low ask is just a little, 20 feet into that field to park cars. That way, the big ask and the ultimate goal would be a bit more to maybe put in a pump track, and like Scott's saying, that would be an amenity. Like, oh, then something that Hampshire College might be like, ooh, we could add that into our programming, like for outdoor ed, so there's definitely a lot of hopes and dreams, and it's just trying to connect the pieces here, so.
Okay, so I don't think, Amy, we haven't heard from you, but does anybody on the board object to them staying the course and trying to find resolution to the issue?
No, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I think what I heard you say was take the land to park into it, and that is the problem the farmers have. When you have a tractor, you need to turn around.
Yeah, so they need enough of a buffer,
What you
right?
need is the area where they're gonna turn around and park it in where the current road is, or whatever.
Yeah.
Something
Seeding
like
a
that.
50-foot slice of the farmland or something like that, which I don't think would make or break the field, but yeah, obviously it's a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be careful depending on what the field is. If it's a hay field, you don't want any ruts or anything in there. Because even though it might look like grass to a non-farmer, it's still a hay field that might feed animals. So it depends on really what the field is.
Okay. All right, well, sounds like we're good, and good luck. And if you can come up with a reasonable resolution after you do a bit more homework, we'll see you again.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming in.
Oh, yeah, I guess the third ask, which we actually do need to come to you guys for, is a reroute. There's an existing trail called Jump Line, and it is essentially, it's a road, or was a cart path or something that people have built some jumps on at some point. These trails have been evolving over the last 20+ years, and the jumps are pretty horrendous. They're very, the people are doing what they can with minimal dirt disruption, and they've built these big gap jumps that are not safe. We've basically tried to kind of block them off. Our plan is to decommission the jumps and get rid of that and turn it into a flow trail, which is, in that survey, everyone's asking for it. People want pump tracks, they want flow trails. That's kind of where we're at in 2024 with mountain biking. So, there's the erosion issue with the trail being straight down the road. There's a ton of spots where it's, any kind of groundwater and breaking, it's just degraded a lot. So the thought was to, basically turn the trail into a sinuous flow trail, modern flow trail, which is, it will still have jumps on it, but they're, rather than a gap that if you don't make the other end of it, you're not going to impale yourself and blow out your collarbone. It's a safe thing for my kids who are 7 and 10 up to advanced riders, so that is the hope, to basically take this trail that does get used, but it's really not that great, and it's a bit of a hazard and liability. It makes me nervous. That it was actually the impetus for me to really get involved with the chapter. I was there on a Northampton Cycling Club Trail Blasters ride. That's their youth program. And the start of that ride was the woman at the end of the street, laying into us about all these bikers. And I'm standing there with my kids. I'm really had to talk her off the ledge, and we have a 6-year-old kids there. And so that was the start of the ride. And then later on, my youngest couldn't quite keep up. And so my oldest went on with the group, and all the kids were like, let's do the jump trail. All the kids want to do the jump trail. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's great. Go ahead. And in the back of my head, I'm like, oh God, I hope no one gets,
Kirk,
I hope no one crashes.
is the reroute that you're proposing is there any risk that it's gonna go into someone else's property that's not okay
No.
with it? Is it a significant change?
No, I have a photo. I've walked the line. It's basically if you take the straight line and just do.
So the
S
reason,
curves
the
all
reason
the
I
way
ask
around it.
is just because, it sounds like the board has already agreed to allow, repairs and adjustments. So the only issue, the only difference between the MOU that you already have and this request is that there's a slight rerouting, which can probably be considered from the board's perspective, repairs. So I guess what I would suggest to the board is that it doesn't sound like the rerouting or the adjustments they'd be making to this particular jump trail is anything different than you've already agreed to. So I don't know that it's,
That makes it easy. Thank you.
well, that's kind of what I was sensing in
Alright.
reading what you wrote, so.
Need to involve Kayla.
I don't know that it would be such it sounds like it's not, they're gonna be using the same trail itself, yes? Yeah. All right, so conservation,
I think they could just submit it to Kayla. Or actually, you or I could forward it to Kayla,
Okay.
just because y'all mentioned water and runoff. And once you start talking about water,
Yeah.
conservation always wants to just take a peek.
Okay,
I
I have a proposal. We can.
so if we gave conservation your letter that has the hyperlinks in it, that brings you to this particular trail, would that tell her what she needs to know, or would you still need to meet with her maybe?
I'll probably want to meet because
Okay.
I have a map and can actually.
All right,
show
I'll tell you what,
I'm giving it to her.
yeah, we'll connect the two of you guys and you can talk about it.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for your
Thanks,
time. And
guys.
like I said, we'll see you soon. Good luck.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have employee appointments or resignations. It looks like we have a resignation in the DPW.
Yes, ma'am. Nicholas Smith, was hired as a wastewater operator and, he has requested to resign effective effective Friday, the 29th. Scott, has approved this and agrees, with this resignation, and I would ask the board to accept it.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Amy, seconded by Jane. All of the.
Question before we vote, please.
Okay.
What level was this person at? Was he at one of the top upper echelon that we're gonna need to replace quickly, or was it not a concern?
He was brand new, Randy. He was one of the newest hires. He was the hire that we got the added money into the sewer to add so that we didn't have to have a outside company handle our sewer stuff. So they'll be able to replace him.
Okay, thank you.
Sir.
Okay, Jennifer, roll call vote.
Roll call vote, Phil,
Yes.
Isaac,
Yes,
Egan,
Yes.
Nevin Smith.
Yes.
And Parsons.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, item 6.5, that we are passing over, correct?
6.5, I spoke with the fire chief. He is not quite ready to give you the plan, so we're gonna request to pass over it and hopefully have it on the next meeting.
Okay, great. All right, then that brings us to you. You have a proposed communication plan.
Correct. This is one of the policies / plans that was on Carolyn had been asked to create, was on the to-do list that I got when I started. It's quite lengthy, but it's really simple. Please look at this as a true policy and not, any form of a rule or regulation. The difference between rules and regulations and policies are obviously rules and regulations are what you can and can't do. The idea behind a policy such as this is really just to guide someone who wants to understand how the process works. So essentially, what I'd like the board to do is accept this policy so that when our new town administrator comes in or as employees come and go, they can look at this and very easily determine how both internal and external communications can happen and should happen throughout the town of Hadley. It lays out strengths and weaknesses of each of our communication tools for each department. It lays out the different ways that we communicate, again, both internally amongst our employees and staff and externally to the public. And, the last page is really just a flow chart of how that communication, again, both internally and externally should and can and should work. It's not all inclusive. There are things that obviously could happen in case of an emergency or something like that. Or, if you look at the external communication flow chart, elected boards or officials certainly have the authority to communicate directly to the public, your primary and secondary audiences. But the reason that my recommendation or my suggestion or this design is going to the select board is so that a single unified message can be carried out to the public. But that doesn't necessarily negate, your elected boards or officials from doing so on their own. So if you have any questions, I can answer them. But like I said, it fits to what we have here in Hadley. It describes the tools that we have and the things that we can do and we have been successful at in the past, and lays out kind of a roadmap for anyone coming after us to follow and be successful at communicating to your staff and to the public.
So
Go ahead, Jane.
some things on here are more ideas than reality right now.
Some of them are, I would say like maybe in their infancy, or maybe something that we would like to work towards.
Okay.
Or maybe something that we are working towards. It just hasn't been realized yet. But yeah.
Okay.
So Chief Administrator, are you the author of this document?
Yes.
Okay. So you are doing yourself no favor in expecting us to let you leave if you continue to do things of this nature.
Thank you.
In other words, I like what you did. I found a few typos, which I will get to you tomorrow or whenever. But other than that, I thought it was very well written.
Thank you. I will make those fixes as soon as you let me know.
Should we add a signature block here? So much like we do with the open meeting law? I mean, I think there's a lot of really good stuff in here, and making sure that as part of the communication plan, we communicate that there is a communication plan. Shocking, yeah. But maybe include that in employee and board sign-offs going forward. Just a thought. I'm tossing it out.
Anything that you can do to legitimize your policies and procedures for the town, you always want to do. Departmentally, I mean, we have multiple types, and we always have electronic sign-offs and everything is tracked perfectly.
So typically with a policy like this would be considered kind of our first reading, if you will, and then we would bring it back for approval after everybody's had a chance to provide any feedback or edits to the chief. Does that work for everybody?
Yes, ma'am.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
See you in 2 weeks.
All right. Next on the agenda, town administrators report and town project updates.
Okay, you'll notice the report is getting a little bit shorter. I'm deleting things, any significant things that are, that we're 100% sure are completed and aren't going to come back to haunt us anymore. So this thing used to be 4 pages, and now we're down to, 2.5. So, anything in green that you're looking at on the screen, are changes. Since special town meeting, we did, the opioid funds were approved. We will be posting that position soon. We do have a qualified internal candidate that we could look to. And we're aiming for a, New Year's hire somewhere around there. We were going to have Rita here tonight to discuss the service delivery plan, but she is still chasing down a couple of department heads to make sure that we are totally squared away on that issue. So we're going to put her on for December 4th. Fiber update. I sent the department heads that have any attachment to the new fiber an email today. We will be sending a doodle poll out tomorrow. We're going to be gathering everyone together so that the fire chief can go over an update for them and let them know, where we are in the process and how close we are to being complete. The BLS ambulance, obviously the town special town meeting approved 350,000 from stabilization for FY25, and I'll be discussing with the fire chief as we move forward with the budget on how we're going to be approaching FY26, and the fire chief will be here hopefully at the next meeting for his transition plan and update. The landfill municipal solar, a lot of robust discussion happened at special town meeting and it was approved there. I met this morning with Jennifer and with Lauren, with Michael Doctor, and with Jane as well to discuss the task force idea that was brought up at town meeting. And my recommendation would be, what came out of that discussion is that I'm going to be requesting that the chair place on the December 4th agenda, potentially this board creating a committee that would report back to the board to discuss that solar project specifically. So we would not call it a task force necessarily, but an actual committee to bring real information back to the board and keep everyone updated. Russell School, we are really close to getting that report. We thought it was going to take a little bit longer, and the chair and I will be having a Zoom update with AHF on Friday, I believe. That's the 25th. No, next week, 11/25, whatever that is. I'm so tired. Sorry. Town hall consultant, Jennifer, you want to give a quick update on that part?
Absolutely. The Dietz actually presented to Historical Commission last night. I'm happy to send that out to Select Board so y'all can see it. They have some basic conceptual drawings. They have samples of siding that are actually in my office. The Historical Commission is going to be coming to take a look at them. They had a few more questions that I am working with Dietz to get answered for them, and then they'll go back to discuss it with Historical again. But this project's moving forward quite quickly, and they should be coming to y'all with the big picture, if you will, shortly.
Okay, Goodwin, Jennifer, you want to hit that one as well?
Sure. So I would like to discuss with the Select Board the possibility, the $80,000 was proposed for this project. I'd like to discuss the possibility of doing a house doctor contract with someone with a house doctor contract. It's the architect that you would reach out to do projects like this, to sort of have them on call. There's no actual financial impact upon having this contract, and they're just who you reach to. Northampton has this. They actually have a few different architect firms that are sort of on call. I'd like to reach out to Deb Anderson at the Attorney General's office to discuss it with her, just to sort of see examples of other towns and then bring it to y'all. I think it would be beneficial for projects of this scope. So that's what I'm asking to do, and then we'll be able to get going on it and reach out. But we have that. We should be able to jump on that relatively quickly after having that conversation.
Okay.
Everybody okay with Jennifer doing that? I mean, might as well get the information. Sure.
Yeah, it sounds like a great idea.
Okay, thank you.
Library roof. We received the final report from Gail today or yesterday evening, somewhere around there. I have just started reading it before I came over to this meeting tonight, so I can't give you any real information on it, but the Gail has already been locked in that they are scheduled to be at the next library trustees meeting on December 10th, where they will be presenting their findings. So we will know more very soon. That's all I have for updates. There is one request I would like to make, because January 1st, New Year's, is one of our normal meeting dates. I would request that we alter just for January to the second and fourth Wednesdays for that month, if that would be all right. So it will be January 8th and January 22nd.
So a lot of times we move January around because of budget season anyway.
Okay.
So everybody okay with those dates?
I'm fine with it.
I think I'm fine with it, yep. Just one item I didn't notice on here. We also, town meeting also approved the town administrator search.
Right.
Right.
Did you skip over that on purpose?
Because he wants a job.
Well, because I want the job. No. Yes, so town administration, they did approve the town administrator search money for that. We have received, in the previous to that, we had received 3 quotes from 3 different companies. We did a very cursory review in light of the fact that we weren't sure the money was going to be approved. We are about to dig into those heartily over the course of the next week or so, and we'll be preparing,
So that'll be on our.
potential contract. I don't know if it'll be on the next meeting or not, but it'll be soon.
Who are the we that are digging into that, Mike?
Your procurement specialist at the other end of the table over there is gonna help along with our HR director.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
So
Any select board liaison reports? No. Announcements. The only thing I had this evening was just to express condolences to the families and friends of a couple of Hadley residents who recently passed. That would be Maureen McGrath and Dickie Keatsa. So, and on behalf of the select board, I'm sorry for your loss. Okay. Where are we at with executive session?
So my recommendation for executive session tonight, we had a couple of issues. Obviously, one of them was to speak with the fire chief. One of them was to have some non-union employee discussion about potential negotiation. And the other one was actually to look at a policy. And because of the fact that 3 of the 5 board members are remote, I think it's just going to be obtuse to do that. So maybe we just push all of those items off for the next meeting or whenever most of us are here.
Okay. All right, everybody okay with that?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and if that is the case, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, motion made by Jane. You want to turn that into a second, Randy?
Sure. Second.
Jennifer, roll call vote, please.
Roll call vote. Phil,
Yes.
Isaac,
Yes.
Egan,
Yes.
Nevin Smith.
Yes.
And Parsons.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay,